speak about in IIT Kharaghpur. Okay, so compliments to you. Friends, these are trying times for the new generation because we are almost trying course, but it is going to something happen to you, and all these kind of things like water that is happening to the country, etc. You may have to bear it for many years, and that is why it is very important that you understand what these issues are. We will start. I hurriedly made some slides. I thought that some of the quotations and things like that would be better to be shown to you than everything. I'm not going to stick to necessarily to the slides, but anyway, we will go by that. So just like with during last 1 hour. Is repeating at Hindu side. What do you understand of this phrase like Hindu side? What is Hindu? What is Hindu side? You have to little bit ponder over, I think. Right? What is Hindu anyway? Because this is a commonplace term that has been used these days. What is Hindu? In colonial times only such questions were confronted, and what happened was those people who are not Muslims, not Christians, not Sikhs, not Parsis, not this, not that, etc. were all included as Hindus. Okay? But that's meaning what just to look at our own population, are the Adivasis or were the Adivasis Hindus? Were Dalits Hindu? Because this question was raised by none of the Muslim League during the Parliamento deliberations, that Muslim League actually claimed that Dalits and Adivasis should not be counted as Hindus. There were vested interest in theirs, obviously, because the Parliamento reforms were devolving powers to the community, that is the parties, Congress and Muslim League, in proportion of their population. So in this law is subtracted from the Hindu population, naturally the share of the Muslim League would increase. Okay, that was the vested interest. And the question, saying this idea was then repeated by Ambedkar later on and actually created something like its own constituency, insisted upon that Dalits were not Hindus, and he actually claimed that a separate identity to Dalits. Okay, that history must be a little bit more to you. Previous one? Okay. This is the first one? Okay. Okay, next one. So this is a problematic actually when we speak about Hindu as an umbrella term encompassing all kinds of people out there, then it becomes a problematic. Basically, Hindu and commonsensically would be taken as the people who are adhering to Hinduism. But what is Hinduism again? All these terms actually we take for granted, but they have a different kinds of meaning. If those people who are conversant with Ambedkar's annihilation of caste, then you would realize that Ambedkar actually divided Hinduism into two parts. Okay, he dissected into two parts, saying that one part actually dealt with the was the religion of principle and another was the religion of rules. And he contended, he actually attributed that Upanishad etc. gave the first part, the formal part, the religion of principles. But the second one was religion of rules, which came through Smritis, Puranas, Brahmanas and so on and so forth. So most of the scriptures, Hindu scriptures actually dealt with the rule book and created the kind of actually reduced Hinduism to a sort of Hindu society rather to a bunch of castes. Okay? So caste became something like a defining feature of the Hindu people. Okay, that AOC, Ambedkar's analysis was that in order to annihilate caste, then therefore this rule book of Hinduism should be dynamited. He said, because Hindus would never be, because this had an overwhelming impact on the Hindu society, and therefore the Hindu books, rule book, so to say, coming through the Manusmriti and other Puranas, etc., should be dynamited. He used that word. And he concluded, of course, in AOC, that is not very relevant, but he said that, okay, Hindus would never be coming forward to do that, and that's why, as for me, I am going away from Hinduism. Okay? And that 35 vow of Ambedkar that he would never die as Hindu was fulfilled 20 years later. As I said, caste is a defining feature of Hindu. There cannot be a Hindu without caste. Caste being enclosed classes, again these are the Ambedkar's terms, like he's defined in his very first essay that caste was an enclosed class. And it did not have any social osmosis across. Okay? So there was no fraternity. It was his actually font word. So he said that there was no social osmosis across, and that's why they stayed as caste. So there was no communication across the caste. Okay? And that's why these people developed separate culture. Actually, Ambedkar said that each caste actually became a nation. Each caste had a culture, and therefore each caste, that culture conditioned the separate psyches for every caste. So there cannot be that the very title itself, something like a Hindu psyche or Hindu culture or Hindu anything, becomes a problematic. That needs to be taken with pinch of salt. There is nothing like Hindu culture or Hindu psyche which is adjectified by caste. Okay, over the years now, the kind of reference that I am making to caste is probably a classical caste, and castes are not remaining the same. Castes have undergone change, and what we obtain today is perhaps something like a defining that king, which actually divided the caste continuum into two: the caste and non-caste people, Dalits or non-Dalits, and so on and so forth. So maybe that in contemporary context probably we'll have to talk like that. What is common between the Brahmin culture and Adivasi culture? Can you think of anything common between these things? Adivasis eat anything that comes their way. Okay? They do not have any qualms about that. And so are the Dalits, because actually somewhere I had written also that when we come to beef eating, you will find that beef, the good part of beef, was actually consumed by the Brahmins, and the worst part of it was divided in other parts of the thing. And what was left for Dalit was the remains of that of the dead cows. Okay? And according to Ambedkar's version, etc., therefore they came to be untouchables. I do not buy so much in that, but this is what Ambedkar theorized rather. You will find this is a commonplace kind of thing. I don't have to read it out or repeat it. There are plethora of references that Brahmins actually ate beef. Okay? And there is nothing to be shy about. This happened in the ancient India, and later on they turned vegetarian. That is also true. Okay? So Manusmriti, for that matter, just we'll read one or two, because this is a commonplace kind of thing. Those who are interested, you can get it on plenty on net. It is not sinful to eat meat of eatable animals. Actually, Manusmriti says actually bans the human flesh and all. In that context, it comes like. So whatever is eatable animal, etc., it does not ban the meat or eating meat of that. Maharishi, last one. In Satpat Brahmin, Maharishi Yajnavalkya says, I eat beef because it is very soft and delicious. Because there were lot of references in Vedas, etc., but not eating, etc. The Yajnavalkya refuses it and says that I eat beef because it is very soft and delicious. He actually refuses to concede. Yes. So we will actually skip much of it. These are all the references from the ancient texts, etc., and not to make capital out of it. It is only to stress that in earlier times people did relish meat, Okay, and who were the people? The elites were the rabbis, and they released it more. Everybody ate meat. Everybody ate cow meat rather, and and then after whatever that happened, some people turned vegetarian. That would come as a passing reference. That next. It is Vivekanand. Now you would find it all kind of things also, there interpretations and things and that, and we are not an expert on that, so we don't indulge into those kinds of things. These are the raw words. Okay? So Swami Vivekananda says, you will be surprised to know that according to ancient Hindu rites and rituals, a man cannot be a good Hindu who does not eat beef. Right? Maybe as the Hindu to pose his claim, these are the misinterpretations, no problem. No, absolutely no problem with me. They could take misinterpretations, and we are not the people to interpret it either. The ancient culture was the Brahmins slaughtered and ate cows, Dalis ate the remains and dead cows. Okay? This also was the hierarchy. The good part of it is described in the text that good part of it will be going to whose share, and what bad part of it would going to go to whose share. That kind of hierarchy, caste hierarchy life, the share also were hierarchized. A plethora of scholars have observed this fact of ancient India. This stands the fact of ancient India, not many people dare to dispute. Ambedkar wrote on it, did the Hindus never eat beef? In his book called The Untouchables, who were they and why they became untouchables, etc. Ambedkar basically used Pandurang Vaman Kane, who was actually, many of you might know his name because he was awarded one of the first Bharat Ratnas when he was still the precious Bharat Ratna, now it is cheapened. 1963, Kane was awarded Bharat Ratna and he was a very big scholar. Okay, I terminate that because you have to say the caste also of people. The Ambedkar basically used his scholarship, his actually interpretations, etc., while writing the Untouchables. Then of course there is that intellectual giant, D.D. Kosambi, the non-official communist. D.D. Kosambi, I always respect as an intellectual giant. He himself called that I am the non-official communist. The other people were official communists. And then Vivekananda and Professor D. who wrote The Myth of Holy Cow, the DU professor, whose book was anyway became controversial and he received any share of grades, etc. So that person also wrote a book-length thing that what this entire thing was the myth of Hindu cow. Hindu forces counter it, saying they were the communist misinterpretations. As though P.V. Kane, Ambedkar, Vivekananda, D.N. Jha, not to speak of dozens of foreign scholars, were communists. They are obviously not communists. Okay? I don't know. This communist bogey also comes from where? I do not understand, because many things they attribute to communists. That this entire history is actually written and deformed by the communists. I said in one of my columns in FEW that there were no communists as a matter of fact. If India had any significant communist presence, you would not have been there. The very fact that you are there were no communists around. Yeah. Actually, there is nothing to be ashamed about eating beef. All people ate beef in ancient times. Okay? Because man is basically carnivorous. He eats meat. That is the basic nature of a man. He eats beef. Okay? There are certain animals who are actually not carnivorous. What is it called? Herbivorous. Okay? They only subsist on something like herbs, etc. And they do not touch flesh. But man is carnivorous. So basically he eats meat. But societal considerations overshadowed his basic nature in many spheres. As a society, because man had a brain and he actually settled down, formed society, and all that kind of things happened. The society's expediency, etc., actually impinged upon and his overshadowed his basic nature. So he turned, if at all vegetarian, it was anti-nature. The Aryans to start with subsisted on bovine economy. It is well known fact because these were the cattle herder tribes, the Aryans, when they actually entered the Indian subcontinent, it is described amply that they were the cattle herders. They did not know in agriculture. So basically, cattle was the wealth, and all Vedas are replete with that kind of description. The cattle actually constituted the wealth, and they subsisted on that because cattle, everything. They reared the cattle, they slaughtered the cattle, they ate the cattle, and everything happened with that. And it stands to logic. There is nothing to go by the scriptures of where who said what. They reared and ate their herd. Even after secular agriculture, they continued their yajna because after secular agriculture came in, so a lot of magical religious kinds of things were produced because agriculture needs that kind of thing. The seasonality, when the rains would come, what kind of seasonal changes would come, etc. There are people required to endowed with this kind of knowledge to tell people when to sow the seed, when to plow, and all those kinds of things. All agriculture, secular agriculture society or history, you will find that there is something like a magical religious production, and these people also produced it. And for the Western interest, they actually created all these sacrificial rituals, yajnas, etc., where hundreds of cattle, hundreds of cows, etc., were sacrificed as a rule. And this was slowly becoming against the interest of the masses who were actually laboring and doing the agriculture. Because there were parasitic classes, they could do anything, but it was actually benefiting people who were involved in actual agriculture. Yes. The resistance to animal sacrifice, there was a Shamanic revolt. Actually, in ancient texts, as far as Indian subcontinent is concerned, you will find the history, our history starts with this kind of struggle, Brahmin versus Shramans. There is a big tradition of Shamanic revolt against the Brahmanism. So the resistance to animal sacrifice came from the opponents of Brahmins, the Shramans. Okay? Since it made an economic sense to the common masses, the Shramans had Shaman ideology like Jainism and Buddhism, which actually survived and became religions. Okay, otherwise many shamanic ideologies, etc., have died and we do not know anything. They prospered because it clicked with the masses' interest. They said that they propagated one of the things, that anti-slaughter of animals, etc. So naturally, it clicked chord with the masses. To counter the hegemonic influence, Brahmins turned vehemently vegetarian and incorporated them in some of their scriptures. Later on, because this history, again, if somebody doubt that this process should be evident even when 8th century Shankaracharya comes, and actually he incorporates all kinds of things which actually belong to Buddhism, the Mahayana Buddhism, which created a very, very intricate kind of dialectics, etc. Shankaracharya just used that and tilted the table against Buddhism. And then Buddhists were slaughtered. So that stands in the history. There is nothing to be ashamed of. We are part of it. Buddhism was not, however, vegetarianism. Okay, many people think that Buddhism it is something said of Buddhism that this non-violence, etc. Emasculated Indians, and because of that the people could rule over us and all that kind of thing. And during the Buddhist hegemony, this is the argument, It's actually something like mixed up with some element of this thing. This is always the kind of stratagem that gets used. So they actually accuse Buddhists to be non-violent and teaching ahimsa, etc. Otherwise, previously Indians were very brave, and because of this Buddhist influences, other people could really have a takeover into India and rule us. Yeah. Now we have to consider something like India's mobile economy, just to Indian agriculture is the mercy of vagaries of the nature. Okay, India is one of country claiming actually maximum bovine population in the world. Okay, so and this cattle rearing is done by mainly marginal and small farmers, predominantly. All kinds of farmers will have a cattle, but basically these people actually rear cattle, and their economy is very, very dependent. As you will see, rearing cattle and other livestock constitutes an essential strategy of insurance against the declines in farm incomes. Because Indian agriculture, which do not have, after so many years of development, still we do not have, we utterly actually rely upon the nature. So when the monsoon comes this year, nothing came, actually people, suicide rates, etc. started zooming. So this is the plight of farmers. Anyway, world over there is negative economics about the agriculture, etc. during after advent of capitalism, but that apart. Other people have managed somewhere. Other people created alternate avenues. We actually went on talking about it. Distribution of livestock is more equitable than the distribution of land. For instance, like 8.5% in Indian households own up 56.6% of land. This is the kind of inequality that exists at the basic level. Okay, the land distribution is so acutely unequal. Livestock tending and associated income generated crucial most major states. You will find that many all these kinds of things, all major states, you will find that livestock rearing is an important aspect of the rural economy. About 10% of rural labor force is employed in livestock, rearing and related occupations, constitutes about 26% of total agriculture value. Okay, it's more important, nobody is noted, but more important than the food production. For the farmers who actually rear cattle, it is more important than the food production. The 10% people actually account for 26% agriculture value add. Any change in the time-tested balance of India's livestock economy will create huge employment. It is very obvious. We will again revisit this point again for time being. Be as it may, the human history progresses. Instead of realizing why such richly endowed land as India had the longest history of slaving to outsiders, the Hindu forces revived their dream of re-establishing their supremacist rule. It's very funny. We should introspect that India, there is no other landmass as richly endowed as India is in terms of natural gifts. And if you say that there is no other landmass which was the longest period of history a slave to some outsider, anybody came from the northern side and just had a cakewalk into India. What was it due to? It was basically due to caste system, because only handful people were allowed to wield the weapons. Rest of the people actually stayed at sky. Okay, so that they do not realize, and they actually find the imaginary glory in their this thing, and they say think that India was great because the superior beings ruled it, and that kind of supremacist rule they want to re-establish. Rest of the thing is only the stratagem, the parts of stratagem, that they might be wooing the lead, they might be doing so many things, all those kinds of things not to be misled by. They actually are part of their stratagem to reach that goal. If they want to compete in the globalized world, they ought to mind the national economic rationale and at the root empowerment of people. These are the two kinds of things. So much is spoken about the nation and all that kind of patriotism, and they intoxicate us with all these kinds of things, but they ignore the national economy. I will come to that. There will actually revisit the economic part. And of course, at the root of it, even at the root of nation as such, lies the people, and their empowerment is important. Yeah. It is established that the bovine economics critically depends on cow being sold to slaughterhouses after a productive period. Now it is established, there are certain economics, advanced economics, etc. It is established economics that after 3-4 lactations, the cow actually loses its productivity and cow is disposed of. That is the basic, that constitutes the basics of the bovine economy. Okay? In India, the cow is dragged cruelly dragged up to 8 times lactations. That itself is a cruelty over cow, to whom we actually call mother. Okay, it's a paradox. It's a paradox that actually we become cruel to the cow, actually killing or sort of dying does not mean anything, because the life ends somewhere. But if you are respectful for that life, then you have to treat it as such. So you unproductively she is back to give 8-10 lactations, and then it was getting disposed of. And with these kinds of rule in the constitution, etc., now the cow slaughter is banned almost in everywhere. The cows are actually laid to die on their own. So the consequence is that is not permitted. She will have to be paid to minimum 3-4 years of setting the entire economics of cattle trading. Okay, somebody counted that in nominal terms, a cattle to rear per day it requires, per cattle requires 300 to 400 rupees per day. Who will give that expenses to the marginal and small farmers who are actually on the verge of committing only suicide? Okay, and there are cases in Maharashtra with this Maharashtra bill having been passed. Already there are cases already appearing in Marathi papers and Marathi magazines, etc. That people are saying that already we do not have any recourse than taking a loan for that. And loans are killing the farmers in Maharashtra. That is a well-known fact. Yeah. Now, talking about empowerment of people, I am going to just touch upon, just to sensitize you about what this matter is. Empowerment of people, how do you conceive empowerment of people? The basic person who actually comes into being in the world actually requires basic two things, okay, if not more: health and education. Health, because the body has to be good, healthy body, and then only something can get into his brain. Okay, so education brings in that input. So these two inputs actually defines a man. It's not something like an empowerment also. That is the basically that would define as an Indian. And typically, ruling classes have systematically ignored these two things. Okay, talking about the Modi rule, the education was slashed in actual terms. You know, as higher education, it says 16%. That is the slash in the last budget. Okay, the health also actually suffered a similar slash. So this was actually being matched up something like that, but it's actually gone down drastically during his rule. And we again keep on talking about a development. So that needs to be, we should be sensitive about. I said that these basically would define a human being. Thereafter, there are not many social, the empowerment factors, like your socio-economic empowerment, which actually a person had to be provided with something like a certainty of livelihood. Okay, where does it come from? It comes from something like rural masses. The land defines that probably, and urban masses, and even half of the rural masses, employment, the job opportunities would define it. We don't pay any attention to that. Socio-political empowerment, which would be proxied by something like a democracy, and people having a voice to or having something like a say in deciding their destinies. That is what the basic definition of democracy. Who has got that here? It's becoming scarce and scarce. It never existed, but it's now becoming scarce and scarce. Socio-cultural empowerment, which probably could be something like a decadent values, etc., should be decimated, and the modernity could be brought in. We do not have any kind of signs of that thing. So on the empowerment thing, we have been systematically actually ignoring all these basic facts. Okay, the pig leap of all these kinds of cow slaughter and all these kinds of laws, etc., are being enacted with the pig lip of that constitutional provision in directive principles. Now you read it and you will find it. Actually, there is a history of that, and that might be relevant to you. some of the orthodox Hindus in constituent assemblies actually it be included in the fundamental right. It was Pandit Bhargava and Ambedkar, of course, actually saved the embarrassment. Okay, otherwise this animal protection would have got into the fundamental rights of humans. Okay, this would have been a joke in the constitutional joke in the history of the world. So that kind of embarrassment was saved by these two people, and actually it was worded ultimately like that. Okay, that the state shall endeavor augment agriculture, animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines, and shall in particular take steps of preserving, improving breeds and prohibiting slaughter of cows and other range and draught cattle. Makes sense. Makes sense with a reference. It should not have been there. If I am to voice my opinion, it should not have been there at all. But alright, it still makes sense that actually scientific lines and all those kinds of things, and draught animal staying in something like 1950 when the constitution was being written. That time the mode of agriculture was different. Today it is totally different. Now there are not much dependence upon the draught animal and milking cows, etc. There is nothing like any sanctity associated. It's something like it became a business. Okay, there are multinationals who are producing milk, etc. And the entire paradigm actually has undergone change. So accordingly, if you abide by the scientific lines, etc., then you had to read it differently. The interpretations could be different. But unfortunately, even the Supreme Court also keeps on saying, keeps on actually acceding to these kinds of things. Okay. This basically has been an anti-national gain. As I said, what is going to be the impact of these kinds of bans on the national economy? We will elaborate that part again, because as students, etc., you are not and IIT like place, I am sure that you are not interested in something like Bhagavad Gita and spirits and this and that. So you are basically going to manage this entry, and you should be knowing economics harder way. The entire subsistence structure is already distressed. Rural area will collapse. Rural areas, as I said earlier, are already distressed. Okay, and that distress is, I think, commonly known. And this kind of thing is going to be having a devastating impact on that. Already the most malnourished people in the world. We are the most malnourished people in the world. I think we don't dispute. Would be deprived of cheap source of protein. The rich have been getting their protein through more than 200 kg and all, but the poor will be ruined. Okay? All vegetarian people have been supplementing somewhere. But the rich people, the richer kind of classes, they do not have a problem, because there is the substitute diet, etc., which actually compensates the protein intake. But for poor people, actually it goes, it manifests in the deficiency, directly in some deficiency. And this is not all. Okay. Some more feed on mobile economics. Indian agriculture. Let me say something about that constitutional part here itself. The constitution has this clause. There is directive principle. There is part 4 of the constitution which actually constitutes directive principles for the state policy. Okay, these are ordained that a state would make policy according to these kinds of principles. And this is what? These are not justiciable kind of things. There is no need for Supreme Court to accede in toto with this kind of thing. There is another, I just make contrast. There is another article which actually related with education, that the state will provide, and this is the only article where the constitutional makers actually mandated a time frame. Okay, that article said that the state will complete free universal education of 0 to 14 years, up to 14 years of age. They would complete it within 10 years. So that should have been completed. That means our GER, etc., should have been 100% in 1960 itself. Okay, and GER was not defining feature of that. They educated that the education means something else. But not to go beyond, at least GER, etc., in all the kinds of 0 to 14 should have been there. nothing happened. 93 in innocuous cases, okay, Supreme Court observed that this right, something like right to education or the educational right actually is a part of life to education, right to life itself. That was interpreted by Supreme Court in Article 21. So that becomes the right to life. Education is integral with life. So denying education, actually becomes a denying life itself. That was Supreme Court's interpretation, and therefrom the things started moving. And they down the line, they enacted the amendment to the Constitution, making it not 0 to 14, 6 to 14. Both the people typically rule the thing, BJP as well as Congress. So that would, they both simultaneous, right from the beginning. I will come back to that later. So this mischief was done, that enactment, this amendment was carried out, that the not up to 0 to 14 but 6 to 14, and then they brought in right to education, so-called right to education, legitimizing all multi-layered kinds of education. If your parents are rich, you will get one class of education. If you are a son of a chaprasi or somebody, you have something like a non-school for your education, wherein there might not be anything, no teacher, no. The current thing, this thing is that with the PPP kind of thing, they are actually closing down more than 1 lakh schools in the country, okay, the public schools in the country, and being handed over to NGOs and this and that. This closure was under the alibi of rationalization. Okay. So contrast this kind of thing. How becomes more important than education? And education, there is so much of a bunch of mischief that are being played, and brought in something like an euphemism of right to education. Okay. This is the kind of deceitful behavior our people have been having vis-a-vis people. This over. Yeah, that I was talking about, that these days not employing it, station etc. has declined. The earlier kinds of Belgrade and all those kinds of things that we used to use animals for, now no more being used. Okay, so this is actually driving something like an economical way. If the cattle rearing is there, if the cow produces bile is not useless etc., it is to be sort of slaughtered. Okay, so that is the kind of dictum. So when we talk this language, it's something like not a cruelty and all that thing, but it is a basic economic sense and the respect of the life of the animal itself. Over the years, India is seeing balanced bovine population growth in India. So up to something like India has a 300 million bovine population. According to livestock census, we have a very census, livestock census, etc. Many good things are there. Led by colonial rulers, okay, not created by us. Accordingly, there were 191 million heads of cattle in India, average weight of 500 kg, and buffalo weight 600 kg on average. Yeah. Is that next one? Or something this way? Okay. Any legally imposed limitations to create unmanageable problems such as overpopulation of cattle, further escalating, organizing and desertification, because who will actually feed them, where does they feed themselves? I'll tell you, I think it has gone earlier, but something like last year, 34 million cattle were slaughtered in slaughterhouses. 20 million were the that was the bovine population, that is cattle plus buffaloes. And now India basically exports buffalo meat. Okay, and in that 34 million, 20 million were cattle, and 14 million were buffalo. Okay, now we think of, now this cattle slaughter is banned, so the 20 million cattle would add to the population. 20 million is not a joke. It's something like 8% in tune of that. So where would people be actually grazing them? If they graze, overgrazing actually causes desertification. These all environmental impact and all those kinds of things would follow. As well as the increased production of greenhouse gases. This is something in animal that the per head the methane generation of the animal digestive system. There are formulas, etc. Those people who are experts actually they can enlighten that. But that actually would create the greenhouse gases also. That is also a problem. Go on. The total monetary worth of livestock produced is higher than the value of food grain. I think I said this. Okay, it's more important than food grade production. On an average, a milking cow buffalo produces about 1200 kg of milk per year, worth about 24,000 rupees. Further, the hides and skin extracted from slaughtered cattle yield better leather than those extracted from dead animals. There is again a misconception that dead cow the hide is as good as the cow hide. No, it is not. The slaughtered cow hide is much more valuable. I also was not knowing, but that actually fetches something like a 20% more price than the dead cow or dead animal leather hide. So that is there is a difference, and there are many kinds of things like which cannot be actually made by dead cow things like cricket ball of high quality and all. I do not know the technology. Although Supreme Court cannot ban on slaughter, there has been actually Supreme Court rights and judgments in a different phase. So there are a series of such cases that right since 1959 where Supreme Court actually observed that the total ban is cannot be permitted. Okay. There are certain there has been a sense of wisdom also through the legal processes. Simply, some of our friends actually calculated the impact of the ban on this cattle slaughter in Haryana, Jharkhand, and where else? Maharashtra, of course. And thought their calculation was that it might hit up to 2% this GDP. Now that at least that because GDP is our font song, at least people should be alarmed there. That that is actually hurting our GDP by 2%. Another calculation is that alone Maharashtra's economy would be hit by rupees 10,000 crores because of this slaughter ban. But that is not this thing cannot be converted into monetary values. There are larger implications. In Maharashtra, 30,000 to 35,000 animals were being slaughtered every day. On an average, anyway, they yielded 150 kg meat, etc. Around 1.5 million people are directly employed by the industry and are involved in transportation of animals, butchering, processing meat, transportation of meat to either domestic or international markets. Proportionately, all the slaughterhouses are going to get closed. That is obvious, okay? But as I said, the proportion you should mind that 20 million, that 34 million actually constituted 20 million this thing, cattle, and 14 million buffalo. So that would be actually impacting in that proportion. Okay? You can easily compute what would be, how many people would be rendered unemployed, how many people would be According to data from Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, beef consumption of India declined from 1.7 kg per annum in 2003 to 769 grams per annum. Now, it is due to what? Because of this, because the exports are increasing, and most of the meat actually is getting exported, the supply is shorter, and the prices are zooming. Even the meat prices have gone up, although they constitute something like 1/3 the price of a goat's meat. The prices have been zooming. So even that actually is getting manifested into such kind of decline in the per capita consumption of meat. That's been happening. So there are a lot of things, to be said, but I think we can conclude here, and there will be, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. So what is actually our protein deficiency in Indians is one of the severest in the world. All negative parameters we rank out. That there is not much of a thing. We can summarily keep on saying that we are the worst of the world. Even sub-Saharan countries also, they are much better off in these kinds of things. I mean, as far as health is concerned, as far as other basic inputs is concerned, even sub-Saharan, their indices are far better than us. And we actually created around the cow, we have used all kinds of things and created such a mess in lately that the kind of intolerance, etc., is going beyond things. Because all sane people are worried about what kind of country this is shaping into. Okay? So this actually reminded me that Benito Mussolini said, we do not argue because there is rational has died here. You cannot rationally argue with people. They actually transcended something like the limits of even irrationality. That kind of thing people talk. And ultimately, now people are butchering, saving cow and butchering people. They say we do not argue with those who disagree with us. We destroy them. That's it. Okay, thank you.